call the Building and Facilities Construction Committee meeting for Wednesday, July 20th, 2022 at, what is it,
4:05.
4:05. Thank you, Linda. First, just go around the,
Linda Brown.
introduce
Fred
yourself.
Fontaine.
Bob Wormy.
Shirley Mazinski, and our administrator, Matt Wojcik, is with us. So Matt, your first thing, and Matt Benoit, planner. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So you all had your, got your packet from the highway, the Douglas Fire Department, and the police station. So that's the first item on the agenda. And do you, either one of you have any comments? Needs assessment and feasibility considerations supporting options for public safety and/or highway department building projects.
So there's a process, I think, likely to ensue from your committee to interview the chiefs and the superintendent and refine our understanding of what it is we might want a design professional to do. And there is not a specific single option to consider. There's more than one scenario. And as we go along, I think what the board is looking for is to surface questions and have an analytical process of, we don't want to just give carte blanche to a design professional and say, well, here's what could happen, right? So why don't you just have this really ill-defined project and charge us $100,000 and tell us we need to build this ridiculous Taj Mahal. We want to be very practical and at the same time solve the problem. So you have a product that came from the subcommittee of the select board because they wanted to work their way through and at least begin to define the question. And around just how big do these buildings need to be? Are there any synergies if we were to build more than one building? Or is it a better use of our existing stock of buildings to work with a couple of things that we already have and maybe think of one freestanding structure for highway would probably be the best candidate for a single structure. That refinement is what the board is looking for you guys to deliberate on and formulate questions around. You don't even necessarily need to solve all the questions. It's just at least surface the issues and bring them up. Because this process will probably be conversation intensive, and if we bog down the select board's work with it, all of our meetings will turn into 3-hour meetings, and we'll lose that, the business-like edge that those meetings should have. So I will say without hesitation, and was my memo included in that?
No.
So I will make sure you get the memo that I did, because some of Matt's mandate as the community development director overlaps with this. So if we're looking to answer the question, where is the town going to be 30 years from now, in order to try to size the investment that we might need to make in building capacity, that's a planning function. And we thought this would be like easy. So just call up CMRPC and build out analysis is a standard planning point of the realm, right? Well, I guess not. They don't have one. So there are two models used in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I was able to at least grab, there's an institute, a demography institute out of Clark University, and the other, it's going to slip me, it's MAPSI, I believe. MAPSI, even though we're not in the MAPSI region, they've done the whole Commonwealth. The population of the town of Douglas would probably be somewhere between 10,500 people and 12,000 people 30 years from now. So the question needs to be put back to the chiefs, not so much the superintendent, because he's got 86 miles of road now, maybe he'll end up with 92. So is that really going to have a radical change? Maybe we can ask. But it's more, what is not your ideal staffing level, but what staffing level would you need to service a population that's about 25% bigger than it is today? And that's, I don't want to answer that question for them. They're your professionals. As a town, you hire them, so let them speak for themselves. But I think that discipline is what needs to be part of this conversation initially. Because I bring this up quite a bit. Let's say you wanted one more firefighter per shift, and we run 3 shifts. So we're going to hire 3 firefighter paramedics. And let's say that they're fully trained, so we're going to hire them at their competitive wage, so call it 70, and then pay them overtime of about 10 or 15 a year, so call it 85. And then their health insurance will cost another 30. So 3 people at $115 each is now $345,000 just to increase the staffing of that one department by 1 person per shift for 24/7 coverage. That is about as much money as the town increases its tax levy from one year to the next. So you would take the entire increase of a levy at 2.5%, which is the maximum, obviously, under Prop 2.5, and spend it all
Please.
on just
On the fire, I'm sorry.
adding 3 people.
Yeah.
So that's what gives me pause in this process. Like, don't outstrip your ability as a town to raise the revenues to support the staff. And don't build a building that's going to have a lot of unused capacity, because on a per square foot basis, these buildings are expensive. So we need to really refine what we might ask the taxpayer to consider and get it down closer to brass tacks. And bring it back to the select board for that further conversation to come back here for an actual design spec. Conceptual studies can be done fairly quickly, but they need to be well-defined and well-managed. And I've been using the example of the town of North Smithfield, which is not far from here. You're probably familiar with the building. The municipal annex that they have, their police station, is on 146A as it comes down into Woonsocket and crosses Providence Street. And you're familiar with it there. So the police are there, and the question presented was whether or not the town of North Smithfield would rehabilitate the existing annex and make it into a real police station, or build a brand-new station from scratch somewhere else. And in Rhode Island, the legislative body is known as the Town Council, COUCNCIL, not Council, the lawyer, but Council, the group. And Town Council there had a point of view and more or less directed the study towards a particular conclusion. A conclusion that was not shared by the town's building committee. So you're opposites in that town. So now you have this ridiculous Barnum and Bailey public spectacle of a building board disagreeing with the elected town legislature over a multi-million-dollar building, a $30-40 million building, which is a lot for that town to absorb. So we don't want that. We're trying to keep everybody agreeing on a fact-driven analysis, and not to try to direct a result, just try to see where it takes us. And it may be that you might want to enlist, for purposes of a conversation, the services of someone who thinks about things like this, an architect or something, for just one meeting, and try to go through a conversation to get your feet wet around the per square foot price of some of these things. I think the other thing that you may have seen, there is an architecture firm called Weston and Sampson that does a lot of highway barns around the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And they have a spreadsheet template, so you kind of populate it with what you think you need, and it spits out the project cost at the bottom. But office space and training space and locker room space is phenomenally expensive compared to, obviously, cold storage, or even just mechanic space. Because you have to fit it out, and it has to meet OSHA standards and all the rest of it. So the driver of the size of the project is A, whether or not you build new, and then B, can you in any way consolidate those more expensive spaces so that you can save on the total cost to the town for the functionality that you're looking for. So that people know that we're thinking about it, I should at least put it on the table. One option could include a new highway barn, plus the complete fit out of this building so that municipal staff would move to the second floor, or at least occupy half the first floor and most of the second floor, with the police moving some of their operations up here. Because there are hallway doors here and ways to break this building up that were part of its existence as a school. And we also have a lot of things already built in here. Our 911 dispatch position is here. Our holding cells are here. But they cannot, it's really not disputable, they can't continue in the space they're in for a whole lot longer. It's just not big enough. And the third piece of that would be the fire station was built kind of kitty corner in its lot, almost with a thought towards maybe someday we would have to expand this, so we'll leave room on one side and just build out as we need it. Modular or flexible positions, to me, seem to be the most cost-effective. So you build what you need today, but you have all your master service connections are big enough for the building you might eventually build. And you design it in place, but you don't build the whole thing, but you make it so that all you would ever have to do perhaps is blow out a wall and just keep moving in a certain direction. That way you can say to future generations, yeah, we thought about you. We're not making you relocate the whole station. Look, we thought about the space you would need, and we left room for it, and here's the design, by the way. And you would update code compliance, because in 30 years, codes can change. But we're not going to build it right now, because we don't need to borrow the money to do it right now. This is a hellaciously bad environment to be borrowing money. So we're not in any particular rush to try to resolve every last issue right away, because if we go to the market, we may be looking at 4.5%, 5%, even 6% money. And at the same time, the highway department really needs a building. So if you ask me what my number one priority is in my job, is to get them a building. Because they're not safe and healthy working where they are now. So that's kind of why this is here. The board sent it to you. It is in your mandate. The bylaw that creates this board says that building feasibility and the needs assessment associated with it is the bailiwick of this committee, unless the board takes it back for itself. Okay?
Thank you. Questions?
I have a question.
Sure. Bob?
So I mean, this is, I look through this. This is kind of like a want list, like a request for space and stuff. Is there like a set of actual standards for amount of personnel, a type of, like a state standard or something like that for space requirements?
Yes, Madam Chair. The most specific standards are the advisory standards set by the fire service in the NFPA.
Right.
So they will mandate a firefighter who's going to be here overnight would need a certain amount of space for sleeping quarters. Your turnout gear, where you're going to change into your turnout gear is a certain amount of space per firefighter for the storage and changing. And that translates into a certain amount of break room space, number of bathrooms.
So there is a standard?
There are
we can
standards.
use as a, maybe a template or something?
Police is a little bit less. They're more, the FBI sets staffing standards on a per capita basis.
Okay.
They don't necessarily mandate specific square footage associated with each staffing, but what they typically do is they'll say best practice would be you need not one, but two interview rooms. The interview room should have a certain amount of configuration. A certain number of people in town, you would need a certain number of holding cells, because you might use all of them. And holding cells have monitoring and security requirements. So it's more about the function of the police department driving what they need to equip the space with, and not a square footage.
It's based on population rather than crime statistics.
Yeah. So I'm with you on that. I don't believe in really vague connections, Madam Chair. I agree with the member, because this is what I used to do for a living, right? Is operational throughput manufacturing, and right-sizing those kind of organizations. To me, this is a data-driven conversation based on calls and average time per call and the capacity of staff to service the needs of the community. So I'm not just, and this is the part where I think the chief should speak to what they really do, because I think we hear dispatch on our scanners and we hear them run to the hospital and they clear the hospital, and for many people the assumption is they're done, right? So when I picked somebody up, took them to the hospital, cleared, and it was about an hour and an hour 20, depending, say we went to Worcester. That's not true at all, because now the medics come back to the station and they have to write a detailed report on every single thing they did to that patient. And it has to be at a level of detail so that our reviewing physician, our managing physician, can pick that report up and say that our medics are following protocol. And it can take them a couple of hours. If we're in the middle of a pandemic, that ambulance came back to the station, before you can do your report, you have to disinfect it. It takes close to an hour after a COVID case has been transported. So that call went from an hour in our imagination, because we heard the scanner, to a 4-hour block. So that's, you think, all right, so what does it mean to do 10 calls a day? Well, it means you just worked 24 hours, but you had 40 hours worth of work to do. Something is going to slip. We manage a very fine line with public safety personnel. Especially nowadays, where it's really hard to find people who want to do the job. They want to be busy. They join because they want to help people, because they want to respond to emergencies, because they want the training. They don't want to sit idle for too long. So when we look at a staffing model and staffing retention, we not only staff according to our run volume, but we actually want them to be fairly busy. So it might be comfortable to do 2 calls a day, but that's not a good staffing model, because we may not be able to keep people to sit around to do 2 calls a day. So I really think that's where this conversation has to go, and put everybody off the wish list and into, well, what can the town afford, and what is our run volume going to demand us to have if our population were X. One last thing, I'm sorry to be verbose, Madam Chair.
No, it's good information.
When we think about staffing and public safety, if you remember your math days, there was an algebraic thing called absolute value, right?
Yeah.
You remember, and it was a step function. So, you chug along and then you jump up to the next level, and you chug along and you jump up to the next level. I think the best way to think of that is actually the staffing model for a school. It bothers me to no end that people think, oh, they're moving into town with their children. Oh, maybe those children are going to take empty seats in a classroom, right? It's not necessarily true that because you add 1 child that you're going to add 1 teacher or 1 classroom. It kind of goes like that, and it's the same in public safety. You see it really come up around 10,000 people, between 10,000 and 12,000. Is where the small town staffing model of having maybe 1 cruiser on the road and a supervisor, or 2 cruisers on the road and a supervisor, really starts to get insufficient. And I know there's at least 1 resident in town who bent my ear one day. They don't even have cops in Thompson, Connecticut. I said, well, how safe do you feel when you're in Thompson, Connecticut? Because, sorry, but in this modern world, we're expected to respond to domestics and other things that happen, even in small rural communities, and you can't show up all by yourself with your flashlight and a sidearm and think this is going to go well for you. So there are, usually at that 10 to 12,000 people is where you put on that next level. So if you follow my reasoning, I think at some point in the next, between the 20-year mark and the 30-year mark, you need to be prepared for that increase in staff. And I'll let the chiefs kind of have their own take on this, but that's my take. I
Sure.
appreciate the time.
Yeah. Anyone else? Good comments.
So we can have them come to your next meeting, just if you want to prepare your questions and go over the materials. If you have questions in the meantime, we can forward them to them so the meeting is efficient.
I think it would be maybe a good idea to do a group tour
Tour would be
of those
fabulous.
facilities.
Yes.
Fred,
I was
Because
gonna ask-
that we're all seeing it with the same, with
Right.
different eyes, but at the same time, with the same explanations and things
Right.
like that. So, I'm willing to try that sometime, aside
Okay.
from the meeting.
Yeah,
We can
I
set it.
read the highway department, and I was like, they've got all that stuff there? I was like, oh my God, where,
Yeah,
I've gotten sand at the highway department, I looked around, and I'm like, wow, it's really small. I'm like, no, where are they keeping it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do highway and fire in the same afternoon or something like that. Maybe do this building. There's other projects going on in this building that I haven't seen yet.
And you really need to see the police department. I think it's
Yeah.
important for people to grasp. The other piece of this is there are civilian employees down there who work in dispatch, and there is also the same thing, right? When the call volume into the console gets to the point where one person can no longer handle it. Do we have room to add a second position? That's an open question. But yeah, whatever you decide you want to do, just let me know. And-
Sure.
Because you can post the meeting,
Yeah.
and convene in one of these locations.
Okay.
Have camera, will travel, right? I'm looking at the cable.
Yeah.
So we'll, whether it's the next meeting or the meeting after, I know, we'll be discussing which date, because I think you're away, so we'll get to that, but, no, that's very good. Matt, you mentioned something about Clark and having,
There's an institute there, and the
Institute,
name is going
yeah.
to slip.
That's
When I
okay.
send you the memo, I cite it specifically. It's a name like Rosencrantz or Rosenstein Institute for Public Demography or something. And
okay,
they use a specific model
sure,
for estimating population trends and where they're growing.
okay,
And you can go to their website, scroll through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts town by town. They will tell you they are really trying to drill down on county level populations, but then they use an allocation table to do the town by town analysis. It's about as good an estimate as you're going to. It's an imprecise science. I think.
So many years ago, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I think it was when the fire station was built, and there was talk out there of, oh, okay, highway department, the fire station, and gee, the police department could be in the middle there. Well, of course, that never happened, but here we are,
I mean, there's absolutely not enough room
No,
there
no, there is,
to tear everything down and
no.
build something big.
And my favorite feature of the Douglas landscape, since I've just been through hell for the last 2 days, are these ancient easements. So you
Yeah.
think, that's a nice field, look at that, we could
Yeah.
put a building right there. No, you can't, because Joe Smith had an easement to drag timber across that way.
That's right.
And the National Grid came through this way, and by the time you're done with it, the thing is carved up, and you've got to go to all those parties and extinguish those easements.
Yeah.
In the case, there is an easement in between, the fire department and the highway department buildings that is to pass and repass to the properties in the
Yeah.
And our chance of getting rid of those is zero.
Right.
Properties already exist,
Yeah, there's a house
houses
back
back
There's a
there.
house.
Yeah, there is. Couple, yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
The wonders never cease.
The other thing, and I'm sure there's other communities like this, but Douglas, we have at least, well, we have one good-sized campground and another campground down below that one, but that's in Sutton. And then you have cottages that people come to during the summer and other facilities that enjoy, have summer things going on. And it increases the population tremendously. I bet a couple thousand.
As will any potential large employer.
Yep.
So that is part of your daytime load, is to consider that.
So they live at these campgrounds during the good weather, and they commute to their work. And then, yeah, progress is great, but we're building facilities and increasing the travel in the community. And, over to Webster or...
And safety
Yeah,
needs.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so we'll set up a meeting if that's what board wants.
Or do you want to do a tour first, or meet with them?
That's what I took from
I
it.
think so, then
Yeah.
we'll have more to talk about at the meeting.
Sure,
Yeah.
all right. All right, so we'll have to get times, dates that you people are available and see if it fits in with what we can, what they can arrange for us to do.
Before the next meeting?
Depends, because we may, let's look at when the next meeting is, between then
The
and...
10th,
Yeah, maybe.
3 weeks?
Well, we haven't decided yet.
Well, yes, we have to, because you won't be
We-
here
we-
on the 17th,
we will.
right?
We will.
Yeah, I know we haven't voted on it, but we've decided.
We talked about it, and then it wasn't definite. Matt Benoit, any comments as planner?
Many. I mean, we went through the entire process, and I guess my comment is more of a form of a question. Have any of the members of BFCC had a chance to watch any of the videos of those
I
meetings that
haven't.
we had? Because
Oh, I've seen everyone.
yeah, our representatives, through the chair, were up, gave us some pictures and showed us some examples. But to your point, Bob, that it would be really good to get your feet on the ground and do the tours. I think that's certainly better than just the photos tell. But the detailed reports provided by the staff and the teams for each of the 3 departments is very helpful for helping push this along. And to what Mr. Wojcik was saying about the entire process for modeling and this stuff, we certainly need this committee's feedback first before we're really looking to kind of start that process. But kind of more of a blanket statement, but I'm really happy with how this is moving along so far. And your feedback is certainly going to be very appreciated as we move forward with us. But as Matt says, it's going to be surprises. I mean, just hearing about that easement, that's not something I even knew about yet. But those sort of things can come up and totally surprise you. So getting the process started is certainly pivotal. The needs continue to rise the longer we wait. And so getting this started is something I'm happy to get started with too.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll see if we can set up,
To email.
yeah. Yeah.
We'll work it through Lisa, and that way
Yes.
we won't get lost in the woods like I do if I try to do it myself.
All right, any other questions, comments? So this will be continuing on. All right. Okay. Let's have some reports on the progress, if you could. The library, right, the library was the ceilings and stuff. Nothing else is taking place.
Correct.
So Should we leave it on here?
You can take it off. The project is closed. The cleaning job wasn't up to snuff, so
I remember you mentioned
the
that.
director went and had that all taken care of, but we're closing this punch list system.
Okay. All right.
So do we have to have a motion to remove it from the agenda, or
We can, if you'd like.
make a motion to consider the library
Project.
project number 2012-01 completed and removed from the agenda?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? Okay, Green Communities. It was light bulbs and, Matt, do you have any?
And so the adult social center project was completed.
Okay,
Was completed prior to the turn of the fiscal year. The fire department LEDs, I believe, are just wrapping up. Those are finished as well. The high school project will be starting at the beginning of August. The full intent and goal of all parties involved is to finish that before the kids go back to school.
3 weeks or
Yes.
something?
Oh my
3 weeks.
gosh.
It's an estimated 8 to 10 days.
okay.
So they have a small cushion there to finish that. But invoicing, permitting was taken care of recently. There was a slight snafu on that end where they were absent to apply for the permits, but those were taken care of. And the project's moving along at a good speed so that we can hopefully wrap this up before school and give us an opportunity to apply for the next round of grants if we have other projects in mind. So other than that, working with a consultant has been pretty good. It's my first experience with this consultant to date, so.
It's very good on lines.
Yes. So, yeah, they seem to be meeting their schedules as they've proposed them, which is nice. So I'm happy with how it's going so far, but still 2 down, 1 to go.
Okay. Any questions? You good?
So there is one last piece of that,
Yeah.
That's late.
the insulation. So I signed off on the insulation. I didn't want
Last week. 2 weeks ago.
The insulation for,
the fire station.
That hasn't started yet.
Hasn't started yet, but they're authorized to proceed. The consideration there was, what, do we really want to tighten up the building before we've made the final, before the select board has made a decision whether or not they're going to fund the heat pumps and all this? And my answer is yeah, because first of all, it's Green Communities money, it's grant money, it's not Douglas taxpayer. But if this is delayed for any reason, we've got to get through a couple more winters, for whatever
that's,
reason,
yeah.
then let's just be sure that we've done everything we can, and if there's something in the way, we'll move it out of the way. It's insulation, it's not concrete. So we're just going to go ahead with that.
And it could always be used, if they move out of there, it's still our building.
Right. And
Be
it
nice
does
and
include things
insulated.
like weather stripping on the overhead doors, and so things that really are really needed. So that furnace roars through fuel, roars through fuel. So if we just even get a 10% improvement, it's
Right,
actually a dollar amount that's respectable.
yeah,
Yeah, good.
yeah. All right, good. So keep us posted on that. Municipal backup generator, are we,
We're going out to bid tomorrow.
all right.
Howard Greer coming through. It took him a little while to get through his backlog. But he's asked a lot of good questions. And so we'll be up on a website called Bid Docs. And in the Central Register, Combis, and the newspaper for a 21-day period. So it's effectively a 14-day advertising period, but we have to get everything in place for the 7 days before that. His cost estimate came back at 165 with no contingency. Contingency on this would be about 10%, so call it a 176. I call it 180. I just rounded up to $180,000, project potential. And the town meeting allocation for this was 215. So there's a little bit of headroom if we run into supply chain or other issues. But It is as he briefed you, so it's still, tank underneath, stairways up, generator on top, on that end of the building,
Enclosed.
and enclosed, and handling the full load. So that's where we are. Electronic bidding is so anticlimactic. I don't like it. I like sitting there opening the envelope, and all the vendors are sitting there looking at each other, and saying, what's this? And only the guy whose envelope it is knows what the number is. And electronic bidding, you press a button, it goes, apparent low bidder, and you're done. It's kind of boring. But the wiggle room here is going to be around lead times and who thinks they can get us generated the fastest. And the nature of public building contracts is we cannot take that, and really can't take that into consideration. We can set a date due by, but we don't give anybody any extra points for getting in faster.
Okay.
Chapter 149 bids are done on the basis of the lowest eligible bidder. So your minimum qualifications establish eligibility, and then from there, it's price. So
But if there's some background,
if there's a negative background report at DCAM or anywhere else, we can disqualify. Because that's not, you're not eligible if you have a bad
Okay.
track.
okay.
But all
Question?
hands on deck, hopeful.
Yep. Bad Luck Pond, I went through there many times. It's looking good, but has it
It looks great, but it's not done.
still?
So we did move Mr. Fenimore's fence and gate at his request, and it was part of the project.
Okay.
So thank God they came back and did that. So he can be ornery at times. But he was not ornery about this. The interactions were civil, and so we moved it for him. There's a punch list remaining. The issue that concerns me the most is that there were some wetland plantings that
Yeah.
were supposed to occur around the embankment,
Yeah.
and I'd really like to see that taken care of. This particular vendor seems to be following a method, because they have other projects of a similar size in other towns in this area, that they're rushing to get everything passable so that, and guardrails up so that it's safe to pass, and they're essentially done, but they're not really
Right.
getting the punch list done. So GPI, which is the architect on this, Grumman Peterson,
Yep.
whatever that is, they are pressing them hard to finish the punch list. I got a complaint from a sub that they hadn't been paid yet, and their bill was 7 months overdue.
Ooh.
So I have held back the payment to the progress payment from the bridge company. Normally, we would pay out about 90% and hold back 10% until the checklist is finished. I've only paid out about 75%. I'm not going to release any further funds until a sub tells me they got paid for the concrete, pouring the concrete. It's just fair. Small business people can't wait for 7 months to get paid, so
Right.
that's where we are with it. But in
Okay.
terms of safety and appearance, it's pretty much what we
Yep.
bargained for.
And the municipal fire alarm is still waiting. It's on hold, right, till we get other things done. And gee, I just went down and looked in the gym regarding the windows.
You like those? Want to just leave it that way?
No.
They finished today, taking the asbestos frames out. So we're left with the perforations of the wall penetration. The openings, I should call them. The openings are there. They've been secured with what looks like duct tape and plastic sheeting.
I hope we don't get,
Advanced glass was supposed to start
Storm.
today. So when they took the last window out, Advanced Glass was supposed to be putting some new ones in. The installer, this is like our life around here. The installer had a death in the family,
oh,
and today was the
funeral.
funeral rites. So they are going to start Friday.
Okay.
Their lift is here. You can see it over there, that blue lift, which is a better solution than the boot jacks the removal company was using. So, it's one of the,
So,
Anyway, knock on wood, they all got out of here safely with their head intact.
okay.
But that's,
So
the
this,
end is in sight. I think it's going to be 2 days, Madam Chair, for them to get all the windows.
okay. So again, this should tighten up and help with the heating around the windows.
I think it's going to be really nice natural light in there without the glare. The windows will be really tight to the elements. So,
Okay. All right, public safety radio system, where are we? Still,
so if you have a blood pressure cuff handy,
no, I have one
you
at
can
home.
slip it on me. No, I exaggerate just a little bit. Progress has been made. They have been here putting radios, testing radios in our vehicles,
Okay,
but our network isn't set up yet. The fiber network isn't connected to the radio system because the radio system's not installed yet. So they're not fully functioning yet in that sense. So we're doing a couple cruisers at a time, then we'll go over to fire and start there. The cell tower company is not the most customer-friendly group of people to work with. So at this point, it is not even an issue of whether or not they're going to give us permission or Marcus Communications permission. It's that there's, oh, you forgot to fill out this form. Sorry about that. It's almost like you're in a Russian train station trying to buy a ticket during the Soviet era, right? Oh, sorry, comrade, you need another piece of paper. So every time Marcus sends in something that's, oh yeah, oh, about this, oh, and then it's been more than 30 days, so you gotta start over. So it's almost like fighting with the IRS, but the latest projection from the tech is 6 to 8 weeks will be done.
oh my God, okay. Okay, it's been going on. Did Marcus have a change in personnel
They
along
did.
the way?
So we're on our third project manager. This, the paperwork thing really, if you think about it, it's a project management issue.
Yep,
Stuff sitting in the inbox for too long, it should just, as soon as it comes in, should turn right out.
okay. All right. And Matt Benoit, jump in anytime if you have comments. So, HVAC units on the roof of the municipal building, and that, wow, you know,
So
we
I'm
need this so
watching
we
the
can get the
spec.
roof.
Yeah, I'm watching the spec be developed for this. This same engineer is finishing, I don't even see it on here. Is finishing the projects, we're going up, our bid is posted for the day tank
Yes,
replacement downstairs. Same guy, Seaman Engineer. So when he completes that, he's going to turn his attention back to this. But the spec has been partially developed on bid docs. So I'm confident, no, I shouldn't say confident. I'm hopeful that we'll get this out quickly once he's done with that. Because that does tie up the roof. I think at this point, with the lead times we're looking at, I think we could still get a roof done in the fall, but I'm much more confident it will be the spring. The crisis is to get the HVAC in
Yeah.
for the winter,
yeah,
make sure it's running, hooked up to the new generator, hopefully it will be in place by the winter, do the roof in the spring. Wasn't the plan, but I think, if I'm trying to manage your expectations, I would say I think that's where it's going to be.
questions, anybody? Okay. Are there other roofs that need to be done, say, you know, so if there are, come spring?
So Adam has requested that the select board consider the roof over the elevator shaft
Okay, yeah,
as, so if we can't afford it under the main roof replacement, we're going to put it into the bid as an add alternate. If the bids come back and the add alternate can't be funded, Adam has asked, well, let's fund it with ARPA and have, the contractor will be here. I believe it's a different roof type, but they would still be a commercial roofing company, they would know what to do to take care of that. Of all of our roofs, that's the most vulnerable and most important, because the elevators, all the equipment for the elevator is
Yeah,
under that roof, and it's
Right.
old. So,
okay.
I'd like to do it.
Anyone? Okay, heat pumps for the fire station. So I believe last time it was kind of not sure if that was going to happen.
This is also on the ARPA funding request that is pending before the select board.
Okay,
I'm trying to remember how much I asked for. I think it's 175,000 for design and the heat pump system. I think I've already said this out, so if I'm repeating myself, just cut me
It's
off.
okay.
I talked to some people, I repeat myself. The spaces in the fire station are very different sizes. So the heat pumps have to be able to do their job without fighting against each other. Howard really wants to do this because he said if we can get that old furnace completely taken out of the equation and removed from the building, it's going to free up a tremendous amount of room in the mechanical room. This is why you need to do a tour, because then Fred saw. When you go into the mechanical room, the furnace is on your right, and it takes up that entire space. And then you look to the left, and the tanks take up all the space on your left. But Howard's saying we could do so much better job of installing your electrical master service connections and your heat pump system if I had that space to work with. So I'd really like to just add on to his contract as basically a change order, and have his mechanical engineer piggyback, and then we design the heat pump system into the electrical demands and arrangements in the building with the rest of the electrical. That's the hope. But I need a funding source, and
so you'll keep
we did
us.
not put this on the capital list because we thought ARPA
Yep.
was going to cover it, so that's what it is.
Green community eligible.
Now, Green Communities uses this extremely rigid payback model.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
They stubbornly refuse to contemplate the impact of the insulation with the weatherization taken together with the heat pump. So when they run their numbers on what the heat pump would save us, they're running it based off our current consumption of oil and replacing that BTU for BTU with the heat pump. But if we tighten up the building and then we go with the heat pump, we're going to save way more energy, and it would pay itself back within the target time frame. It's like pushing a rock up a hill. That is not what they do, and they will not change that method. We had the same conversation about downstairs here with the heat pump system we put in here, because the idea was take the old system out. Let's go. Let's just clean it up. And so now we have this issue where the two systems fight each other under certain circumstances. I think we've gotten better at managing that, but it is what it is.
Okay. Questions, anybody? Comments? Okay, the oil spill, ongoing.
So I gave kind of a long briefing to the select board last night, and we're deep in here. I think maybe we move this to the top of your agenda, Madam Chair, next time, so we have more
Okay.
time to go into detail. For the time being, I'll say this much. We've had 2 meetings now with the new environmental consultant basically the peer reviewer that we hired. The other guy ran for the
Yep.
hills. And with good reason. It appears, after reviewing all the data that was collected and the methodology that was used by the initial consultant, that from a certain point of view, it will sound like Obi-Wan Kenobi, from a certain point of view, a cynic might suggest, I'm a cynic, that the consultant was fishing for work and did sample here, sample here, sample here, sample here, sample here, sample here. And the guy that we hired to review the work, Pat, I'll call him Pat from Environmental, 21 Environmental, says, look, what I would have done as an experienced consultant in this field is I would have gone down, I would have taken some samples where there was large pools of oil on, or where there's a
Yep.
crack or a seam in the floor, And whatever came back hot, I would do samples around it to try to get the limits. And if I had to keep expanding out, I would. But since the oil was suctioned off the floor and we only really thought we lost maybe 20 gallons out of 300 something that fell on the floor, you know, it wasn't going to be like this catastrophic plume
Yeah.
like you might get at a landfill or something, God forbid. But you would, once you establish the limits, you could really say, well, this is a remediation area, and therefore it should be a tier whatever spill event. This guy went around and around and around and around. He even took samples out of the crawl space. Now, if you're familiar with this building, the floor is down here, right? The day tank spilled the oil onto the floor down here, and this guy's taking samples off the dirt floor in the crawl space that's up here and had no staining on it. Unless, you know, that thing squirted across the room like, you know, a sprinkler. There was no way that could possibly, so that those are sort of like irrational moves that are really seem to be, I'm looking for oil, not I'm looking to remediate this specific spill. The evidence becomes a little bit more compelling when, and I think you're going to remember this.
Yeah.
Actually, you might all remember this. Before the gym was built, there was actually, the building extended into that space. So the high school, and I'm going to say it was probably a set of stairways for fire evacuation, were probably hanging out over the end of that building. And it had a basement. And in the basement, there was a fuel tank for the double boiler system that was in the interior. And there was a fuel line that ran from that concrete pad all the way over to that tank. When that part of the building was shaved off and the gymnasium was built in that space, the oil tank was removed and they went to tanks at the outside. But the fuel line was left in place. So this guy, you know, if you know what you're looking at, you see it immediately. It runs along the edge of the floor. There's an old fuel line. And so here he is under the stairwell doing samples. And he came back, nothing after a couple inches, nothing after a couple feet. Now, the rational thing to do is to stop, right? So the oil that came out of the day tank may have been on the floor over here, but now I've gone down a couple feet and I'm not detecting anything. Keeps going. And at 6 feet, he finds oil. We all think what he's finding is oil from the old tank
Yeah, probably. Huh?
from 1950 something. And then it triggers the obligation to remediate it. Right? So it wasn't even part of this spill, but because he found it, he's excavating. So, and there's a lot more squirrely stuff like that. Long story short, we were characterized as a Tier 1 event. And the Tier 1 spill under DEP's grading system is a heavily supervised by the DEP. They say that, right? They're not really. It looks good. Tier 1! And he didn't really meet the threshold to designate it a Tier 1, but it has not been closed out as a Tier 1. So what Pat's approach is, he took new samples, so he probably saw people here working. He took a new set of samples, measured the findings. They will do what is called under this particular body of law, a risk assessment. And he's going to use method 2 or method 3 risk assessment to demonstrate that it is not a Tier 1 event.
Okay.
In which case, if he has to do any more digging, it would be minimal, but he should be able to close this in place without any additional work. There will be no vapor evacuation system. There is absolutely no threshold triggered for that. The only thing he knows he has to do is the wells that were dug outside to monitor the groundwater, that was completely botched, so they need to be dug again. They're dug in the wrong spot. They were backfilled with dirty soil. So they're blowing positive results because it's not a clean site. So there are all these standards in place for how to do this, and they weren't followed, so we're going to try to close it out. It's way more cost efficient than what we were doing. So, as I told the select board last night, I think I have a professional obligation to have at least a conversation with our insurer
Yeah.
about the integrity of the consultant that they hired to do this work. The pool is exposed to $500,000 loss. We're still in it for $100,000. And it doesn't look right. So somebody other than me has to decide whether or not they're going to take action based on it. So then we will get a letter from 21 Environmental that will trigger the follow-on activity for this.
Okay.
So that's where we stand with it. I wish it was better news. I guess I'll explain here for the purpose of redundancy that our insurance premium as a town is set by our overall losses. And we look back, actually all the way back to 7 years. But more recent events are weighted more heavily in calculating our premium. My argument to Maya would be, this should never have been such a large claim. Your consultant made it into something it wasn't. I don't think it's fair to whack the town of Douglas for premium increases of 4, 5, 6, 7% year over year, every year for the next 5 or 6 years, based on something that isn't right. I at least want them to tell me to go pound sand and not just let it go. So that's where we are with it.
Okay.
That's really long-winded, but
No.
there was a lot
no,
to say
that's-
there.
But, yeah, why should the town be penalized until, if you get some good information from the present that can back up what he's saying, yeah. Okay. Questions, anybody? All right. And the fire station upgrade generator.
So Howard's working on this one. I don't have an ETA from him, but he had 2 things on his plate, now he has only 1.
Okay. So, yeah, you don't have any.
He's started, I mean, he's been here, I think I told you this, he's done the building tour.
Right.
And you want to incorporate the,
I would like to, but I don't want him to stop on the electrical piece,
Right.
yeah,
right? He
Yeah.
can do all the generator work, and he can size the service. He doesn't need to
Okay.
know for sure that he's got the heat pump work to do that.
Okay. So far, so good. It seems to be a good choice. Okay. All right. So we do have, if there's no other questions, or Matt, you're good?
I believe so.
All right. Good summary.
I have dry mouth, I've been talking so much.
All right, we have minutes here from June 22nd. Do I hear a motion, or?
on number 8, the HVAC
Okay.
roof, municipal main building. It says Seaman Engineering to finish their loan calculation. Is that, or should it be own calculation?
Load.
Load.
Oh,
Load.
load. So it needs to be
A
load.
D, right?
Okay, LOAD.
Yep.
Nothing gets by you.
I used to take minutes for conservation. I was a secretary, so I'm a proofreader from way back.
Anything else?
No, that's all I have.
Anyone? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Bob, Linda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so upcoming meetings, I should say. So Fred has said he's not going to be available on the 17th, and we did talk about the 10th. We did talk about the 24th, but he's due back on the 24th, so that's not fair. So everybody good with the 10th?
I am.
Yeah. Yeah?
Now, if we do a walkthrough through all, as a group, does that have to be posted?
Yeah, because we're, as a group,
You have a quorum, and you're going to be talking about
Yeah.
a matter that would be before you.
yeah.
Okay.
So I wasn't really kidding, I mean,
Yeah.
Have camera will travel.
Yep.
Yeah. Should we do that before the meeting on the 10th? Because then we'd have to post an earlier hour when we
It all
start.
depends if,
Or,
Well, here's a suggestion, Madam Chair, if
Yeah.
I may. We could have this meeting in the day room of the fire station and convene, call the meeting to order. The highway barn's right there. You
Yeah.
see the highway barn, look through the fire station, have your meeting. And then, because that's a lot right there.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And then, I don't know about, I really do want you to see the police station
Yeah.
configuration.
so if this is at 4 o'clock, maybe the police station before that? And again, it's all if it's inconvenient for,
Well, true, you can convene here and then just go downstairs, and then recess and reconvene at the next location.
okay.
Let's do the police station in the September meeting.
Yeah, we could do that,
We could,
yeah. Police station in September? Sound good? Yep,
Yeah.
all right.
Police in September
Yes.
tour.
And everybody is agreeable, September 21st? I make sure, you know. I know you're sick of me emailing you,
No.
reminding you.
That's a good thing.
But I need a quorum, and we need more people, so,
All right, so that's the same time, 4 o'clock.
yeah. And the fire and the town barn, 4 o'clock.
I
On
will, I
the
will
10th?
double check the,
Yeah,
and
Let
the
us
other
know.
thing is if they get calls while we're there,
then,
it'll
yeah,
get a little noisy
Yeah.
that's okay.
for a brief time.
All right,
So August 10th,
yes,
4 o'clock.
unless there's a better time for them.
I'll help coordinate.
Thank you.
That's a
Thank-
Wednesday as well, right?
I'm sorry?
That's also a Wednesday?
Yes, second Wednesday, yep. Thanks, Matt. And you can email us.
And we'll be meeting at the fire station.
Right. Unless we hear different.
Yeah.
Can you
Okay.
communicate with cable, let them know?
Yes. I think Jen usually does that, but, okay?
So you'll need a motion to change the August 17th
Yep.
date.
Yep.
I make a motion to change our meeting from August 17th, 2022 to August 10th, 2022.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you, everybody. Stay cool. It's hot out there.
You want a motion to adjourn?
I do.
Motion to adjourn at 5:07.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. All right.